I'm a psychoproctologist. I study assholes. So so yes, I think about it a lot. I think about the crime that is able to portray itself as intelligent. Um, uh, know-it-alls, all that sort of stuff. But no, I haven't. I'm not encountering that much of it
Gotcha.
myself personally. I deal with some of it. To give you an example, my ex-girlfriend was stabbed to death by her son.
Whoa.
A week ago.
I'm sorry.
He had gone psychotic. But no, that's an exception. That is not the rule out here by any stretch. Up in the Berkeley Hills, but he had gone crazy. He had. I knew the kid before, long before he was 18. At 18, he had a psychotic break. Humans are dangerous beasts in many ways. So I think about that a lot. I work in that area. That's one of the areas I work on. I do origins of life research. How language makes us different from other organisms. And I do psychoproctology. That's a lot of what I do.
Oh wow.
And what is psychoproctology? Because like you defined it as studying assholes, but like my first thought of when you said studying assholes was not human beings. Like it was a part of a human being.
No. So it's a light name for a serious subject. The subject being studying absolutism of one sort or another. People who act like they've got it all figured out when actually life is more confusing than that. I came up with it as a light name for a serious subject because it's very dangerous to start to talk about who's the asshole. So I needed a light name for this extremely dangerous subject. I mean, one of the things about assholes is they do talk like anybody on who's an asshole. And an asshole is anyone who disagrees with them. So yeah, I wrote a book on it called What's Up with Assholes, How to Spot and Stop Them Without Becoming One. And I started with a fundamental question, which is, what is a butthead, since it can't be just anybody who I happen to butt heads with. It's not I'm looking for a more objective definition of that kind of behavior and why it would come naturally to humans. So yes, I do think of asshole as a human thing. All animals are predators of one sort or another. I mean, there's a few few isolated origins of life organisms that aren't predators, that aren't parasites, in effect, living off of the advantages of consuming others. But humans can do something beyond that. So that's because we have language, we can rationalize becoming basically super.
Oh wow!
Predators.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so you're saying
the way you also said it in the beginning was that made me think in a way that it's very related to the ego, that assholes are know-it-alls, or like they think that they know everything.
Right. So it's an extreme version of ego. I also so one of the main things for me is that language makes us an incredibly anxious species. Far beyond any other organisms' anxieties, because we can imagine all sorts of past and future real and imaginary threats and missed opportunities that other can't even begin to think about. I mean, just compare what you could worry about just before going to bed to what other organisms could worry about. The variety of things that we can worry about. We're anxious, and we're also really good at detaching ourselves or escaping our anxieties through words. So we can imagine all sorts of religious, spiritual, atheistic, philosophical ideas that make it so we feel like we've seen the light, or make it so we can act like we've seen the light and we know what's what. And it's very satisfying to do that. So snarkiness, gossip, schadenfreude, all sorts of, laughing at other people would come very naturally to human beings. I call it pseudo-narcissism at the extreme. That is, there's two ways to elevate yourself. One is to lift yourself up, and the other is to put others down. So I think of that as all very natural behavior for human beings. And so I'm not one of these guys who says you can eliminate the ego. I think we'll all have ego till we die. All organisms have ego in the sense that they are all selfish. They are all trying to figure out what to do in their struggle for existence. We tend to prioritize ourselves and our own. So that's all natural and universal. But what's different is we've got language, and we can rationalize becoming super duper predators. So yes, there would be that side to it. Yes.
And evolutionarily, how do you explain that? Because you'd think that, if someone's an asshole, they're going to get wiped out, right? Because no one wants to be with them or be around them. They're ostracized. But you think, all kinds of negative traits would be faded out evolutionarily.
No, yeah. So this also comes up. This is we say crime doesn't pay. That's not true. Crime pays extremely well if you can get away with it. So it's more of an aspiration to say crime doesn't pay, that crime shouldn't pay. But the other thing is that there's an awful lot of if you get a choice between beating them and joining them, there's awful lot of attraction to joining them, being basically like the punk who joins the bully or whatever, like that. Basically that kind of behavior would be natural. And so yeah, you'd have it's not like everybody doesn't want to be around them. I only wish that everybody didn't want to be around them. That's one of the focuses. If my work is on diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of assholery, then the treatment side of it is how to disappoint assholes, how to make it so it doesn't pay to be one. And this is completely independent of what the asshole claims to believe. I don't use the word believe or think about what assholes. Different thing. It's closer to animal braying. Actually, it's it's an animal territorial pissing more than anything else. So it's not about what you claim to believe. It's about how you strut it. You strut it like you got it all figured out. Like your job is to straighten out the world. So that's closer.
In your
to
findings, Doctor, what works for you the most to deal with assholes? Because I'm pretty sure everyone has their own ways of dealing with assholes.
Yeah. So the thing about assholes is that they the technical term is frame dominance. They get to play the judge who decides what's right and wrong in an argument they're in the middle of. That is, they're just an advocate, but they play supreme judge. And no matter what you say, they can always top it with their authority. I call it Trumpiring. Trump is a great term because it means both bullshit, like trumped up, and it also means beats everything. So it's just kind of a perfect name for it. And Trumpiring would be you can do whatever you want, and whatever you do is always the best. And it would be a state that any organism would want if it knew how to get it. That is perfect safety and perfect freedom. And so it is very hard to figure out how to humbly humble a human who will do or say anything to avoid humility. So it's a bigger challenge than we've noticed, especially because a lot of people still operate on a know-it-all sense that they have found the universal formula. The universal formula is to be nice to everyone and be receptive and be kind and all of that. That kind of stunts your growth on figuring out, these people are different from that. You actually almost have to reverse a lot of standard behavior. You have to not listen to the content that they're delivering because they don't mean their content. They don't actually mean what they're saying. They're just saying it,
they're lying
to win.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
So it feels like you're playing three-dimensional chess, but that's just because they're only playing on the up and down level. You're not used to that. You're used to people dealing on the ground level somehow with reality, and these are people who have detached themselves completely from reality for that sensation as if they're God.
Wow.
The omniscient, omnipotent, omnipotent. So they're all good, all knowing, and all strong, and complete hypocrites too. So they've got that quality of God as well, is that they're one, they're unified. The only thing that they are consistent in saying is that they're consistent. Otherwise, they're inconsistent. But yeah, so it's a kind of a meta hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy about their own hypocrisy. So how do you deal with them? It's a really interesting challenge. There are a variety of things that I suggest. One of the main ones is don't debate them. They're just baiting to you taking the bait. So they're just masturbating to you just taking the bait. So don't debate them. Call them on that instead. That is, you are exposing that they will say or do anything to keep from having to admit that they don't know. So if you call them on that, you're not as, and if you listen to their scolds and their moral authority, you're actually enabling them. They love that. I think of them a lot like exhibitionists.
Yes,
are
definitely.
we on, by the way?
Most definitely.
Are we on?
Good.
Okay, good. Glad to hear. I wouldn't want to waste my
No,
pearls
this is
of
great.
wisdom.
No, I'm definitely. I'm
We'd
dealing
have
with
to say 'em
assholes
again.
in my own life, so
Good,
I definitely
good.
need to know about all this.
That's right, and they think they are
100%.
with you too. Yeah, I was talking to Saeed earlier. Yeah.
Right, big faker here.
No, he was defending you. I said that you didn't have half the brains of a donkey, and he said you did.
Hey, half
Ali
is not bad.
the smartest professor between us two.
I'm just
Glass
kidding.
half full.
So just a joke. Because we're not recording, so I figured.
Yeah, no, I've definitely, dealt with a lot of assholes in my life, and yeah, I just don't want to become an asshole myself, because I hate it. I think it's a horrible quality. Yeah, and so I'm always thinking about my own actions.
Yeah, I got it. So then the question becomes, how do you define them? And so in the book I wrote on the subject, I spent 200 pages just on the diagnosis. I mean, how do you actually figure out what guys are? Because, I mean, who one is? Because it's not just someone you butt heads with. It can't be. That makes it completely subjective. That makes for the world we've got, which is asshole on asshole battle. People thinking this guy's an asshole. So it's really hard to figure out what defines them. And it's not that they're aggressive. You can have it has nothing to do with your style. You can be a very gentle asshole. It's got nothing to do with what you claim to believe. It's not even got to do with how many mistakes you make. I mean, it's correlated. It's not got to do with how much power you've got. So all the standards ways we think of for defining an asshole don't quite work. So that's where the focus on absolutism comes in. I mean, so a minute ago we were talking about ego. Ego tends to corrupt. It doesn't corrupt. Absolute ego does corrupt, absolutely. But other than that, it's a fundamental question. I lie. I'm a hypocrite. I think this is true of all humans. Sorry, I lie. I engage in hypocrisy. So then the question becomes, if everybody lies, what distinguishes a liar? You can't just be that someone lied to you once. People lie. People have to lie. To a large degree, we call it by other names that are much more, that are positive. We call it white lies or tact or diplomacy. One of the kind of fundamental dilemmas that we're all dealing with is the trade-offs between honesty and kindness. They're both counted as virtues.
Right.
Always be honest, always be kind. What do you do honestly critical of someone, and they will think you're unkind for mentioning it? So we're all dealing with that trade-off somehow. Yeah. So yeah, it's a different approach, and it's not a purist approach. A purist would say, well, just eliminate your ego, which is one of the easiest paths to ego and hypocrisy there is. It's the claim that you're selfless. No one is. That's not human. So anyway, some of
that. No, I love because you reading one of your articles about like even the word hate. Like you can hate isn't a bad thing, but if you hate injustice, like you use an example, that's a good thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it really isn't the act itself,
that's right.
It's
so
the context necessarily, and yeah, you're gonna have to figure out a way to use all your tools, but in the right way. It's how it's done. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I'm glad you picked up on that. Yeah. So early on in this research, I realized that most of the moral principles we claim are actually hypocritical. So do not be judgmental is judgmental, or you shouldn't be judgmental is judgmental. Do not be negative. Hate. Be intolerant of intolerance. Even the golden rule is actually a paradox. And so when you look at those things, so this thing like abolish all hate, that is hate, um, there are three responses. One is to double down and say, no, hate. It's kind of a virtue signaling. I call it fundamentalist cynicism, a fundamentalist hypocrisy. The other is to say, it's self-contradicting. It's a hypocritical statement to hate. Therefore, it's all BS, which is cynical hypocrisy. And I'm an ironist. An ironist says, no, the dilemmas are real. You're going to be dealing with them all lifelong. The question then is what to hate, what to be intolerant of. You know, if be intolerant of intolerance is hypocritical, then what to be intolerant is the what to tolerate and not tolerate is the question, and we're dealing with it all lifelong. So, and the hate one is especially interesting because love and hate, they're always relative. The more you like something, the less you like other things in comparison to it. If you love equality, you hate inequality, and you shouldn't mince words about it. But people do tend to mince words about it. So I don't think you can actually have love without hate.
Right.
That is, if I love my kids, I'd hate to have them hurt. Right. So, yeah. So all of that is really interesting to me. And so a lot of my work is basically the opposite of an asshole is a fallibilist or an ironist. A fallibilist is someone who recognizes that they're guessing. That my motto for fallibilists, it's a term in philosophy that we professors know.
Yes, exactly.
Ollie, you and I, we have
that
professor. Down. The motto is no matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet. That's all we ever get is bets. We get to guess. Get to make educated guesses. So this is one of the challenges I deal with when I'm dealing with an asshole. Someone I think is an asshole is that it's a bet.
You could be wrong.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong in both directions. I have guessed that someone is a decent person when in fact they're an asshole, and vice versa. I've guessed that someone's an asshole when they're actually a decent person. You try to minimize those errors, but it's guesswork.
And
so there's
do you think? Go
ahead, Ali.
Do you think people can change? Like, if someone's a pathological liar, in your experience, do people change? Like, if someone is a narcissist or, a hypocrite, can they become not an asshole?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting one. So one of the problems I have to deal with in this book is that there's a lot of school of thought that say don't call anyone an asshole. Don't call people names. Now, don't be a name caller is another one of those hypocritical rules. That is, to call someone a name caller is name calling, as is saying that someone's a nice person. So, but the term asshole is condemnatory. It makes it sound like the person is the way that they are alive. Let's say that is, as long as they're alive, they will be this thing. It sounds permanent. The funny thing is that the irony there is that assholes don't want to change. Point. That is, and it's really hard to change when you're an asshole. That's once you've dug yourself into the hole of claiming to be the authority on things, and once you've done nasty things to people because you think you're the authority or you act like you're the authority, it's very hard to give that up. You're way out on a limb. And to suddenly admit after doing all sorts of awful things that you've been wrong would be that's cold turkeying off of a very strong addiction. And yet I do believe they can change. The paradox then is that I think they can change and they don't. So they're the ones who actually, assholes are the ones who actually don't think they have to or can change. And I'm saying, no, they can. So another popular statement, I haven't turned this into a hypocritical statement, but I'm sure you can. Oh yeah, it's easy. Let me change your mind. You can't change people. Let me change your mind. You can't change people. So you hear out here, at least in Berkeley, you'll hear people say, you can't change people. And my belief is, yeah, I'll buy that as long as you buy its opposite, which is you can't help but change people. That is, the influence of other people does have, it's not direct. I call it Robo Envy, the assumption that we could simply reprogram someone. You get a lot of that in self-help books. Just decide to be different in some way, and that'll, like, you're reprogramming a machine. Yeah. No, we're way harder to change than that. We're talking about changing habits. We're talking about people who are stuck in a groove that we think is a rut, and we're going to try and change them. No, you can't change them automatically, just like adjusting the software code. But I do think that it's possible for them to change. So the other thing you often hear about assholes is never fight with a pig. You'll just get dirty, and the pig likes it. Which is a great line, but it's also a dig at. It's in its own way hypocritical, since it's a dig. You say it to an asshole to try to change them. So it's those are fighting words in a way. But my perspective is, sometimes you got to fight them, and so a lot of my work is on verbal combat as an alternative to violence, to physical violence. And I got a bunch of hippie friends if I'm in Berkeley. And because I lived on the world's largest hippie commune for 7 years, I got a lot of friends who just say walk away. And I say, no, actually you need, and that verbal combat is wrong. And I'm saying, no, verbal combat is our stopgap. If we don't get better at it, we are not going to make it as a society. You need to be able to do
Jeremy,
that
can I present you with a quick scenario that happened to me when last week I was going to the gas station and there was a spot.
You can't.
No. I was going to the gas station. There was a spot open. Nice. I parked there. I'm going to fill up my gas, and then this other guy comes in. He's like, actually, this is my spot. And I was like, oh, but I'm here. He was like, no, this is my spot. I always park here. This is where I fill up on gas. And he seemed really hostile. I was like, okay. And so I just drove to the next spot, Exactly. So how am I supposed to deal with it?
Right. Yes, right. Well, so this is one of the challenges, that so someone talks like that, and that would be an example of frame dominance. The guy comes in and he's going to umpire on his own behalf. He's going to decide who the winner and the loser is, and he's decided he's the winner. And he may have been doing this to taunt you. And your response is completely natural, and I would have done the same. Not if I was wearing a jiu-jitsu
take him down
like you, because you could thug him out. He should have been threatened just by the white blouse. But when you get enough people doing that, then you end up with an autocrat, a dictator. I'm an asshole. I think he's the quintessential asshole. No one would actually believe at this point that he actually stands for anything or cares about anything beyond himself. So, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with that or not, but what he's done, it is exactly that gas station behavior. And the problem is that enough people have succumbed to him that he's, so we can hope where are you guys?
Los Angeles here.
You're located where? That's right. Okay. So we hope that the law will catch up with him, because we hope that society is strong enough that crime doesn't pay, but that requires a whole lot of human effort. It's the kind of thing that we're dealing with these days in spades, is that there's kind of an asshole epidemic going on. Is that a whole lot of people feel entitled to talk like that. But obviously there are situations like the one you describe, where if you're safe enough, you can challenge a guy like that. And mostly I find it useful to ridicule them. If you that is irony, employed irony is a useful tool too. So it would be hard to say, here's a guy, look at this guy. I mean, it's great. It's easier to do verbal combat with an asshole when you've got an audience. So if you could say to him, oh, look at this guy. He thinks he's God. He can pretend. He pretends he's that sort of thing. But not in this case. In this case, maybe what you can do is parody him by taking what he says to the extreme, which is, you could make fun of him, say, you seem to be authority on everything. I defer to you. You guess you can have this space. There are also some potholes in the road up ahead. I hope you're going to take care of them. I mean, I don't know. I'm making this up on the spot, and I have to. But at least thinking about the question, which is, what do you actually say to a guy like this to disappoint him, to basically show him that he's masturbating? And I believe in masturbation. I believe self-love is important, but get a room. You can't. The jerking off in public is a different thing, and that's basically what he's doing, right? So that's my take on it. And yeah, I think a lot of people just haven't even thought of this. They're just kind of hoping for a society where everybody's nice because crime doesn't pay because, I don't know, God's watching or whatever. No, that's not. It's only us, and we have to defense against assholery, and we have to be able to rotate our turret. That is, we have to point it at whatever direction it's coming from, however it's disguised, whether it's right wing, left wing. I have Buddhist friends who are assholes. There's all, they're not outright assholes, but they engage in the same behaviors as Donald Trump. It's not about what you claim to believe. It's about how you strut it. So, and there's a particular kind of asshole that's interesting to me, which is the asshole without a cause other than because I said so. So that's an asshole who doesn't claim to have a banner, isn't wearing some tribal jersey of one sort or another. They just have decided that they're God and they're going to defend themselves to the bend and end. That may be closer to what this guy is. This guy may also have been. Yes, I'm assuming it's a guy, not. Yeah, there you go. Women almost never do that thing at the gas station. I mean, it's been done, but it's rare. But yeah, so who knows? The guy might have had a major chip on his shoulder. Maybe he's been abused all his life. This is another related question, which is, I have empathy and compassion for a guy like that. I don't have sympathy. That is, you need a clutch pedal between your understanding of someone and your charity for someone. So at the extreme, I'd want to be able to make Hitler's case to him in a way that he says, damn, you really understand me, and then slit his throat in cold blood. Just because I understand him doesn't mean that I owe him something. We can't. Accommodation comes at a huge cost. That's the definition of accommodation. So we have to, and we can't accommodate everybody. So you have to be selective about who you actually accommodate. But I don't think you have to be as selective about who you try to understand. So I can understand. I could understand and feel empathy. I can imagine myself being in this asshole's shoes. I can remember that when they were my shoes. Yeah. For example, I have seen myself act in extremely territorial ways about parking spaces. It's kind of amazing how much I become this this alpha male when I'm competing for a parking space. It's kind of funny. So I can put myself in his shoes,
Yeah.
not to the same degree as him. I wouldn't actually have said that. I apologize on behalf of predators all over for what this man did, to you. It was so unkind. But so I can do all of that and still say, no, I'm not going to accommodate you.
No, that's fair. And I think
yeah.
that's where
Like that.
humor comes in a bit too, right? I'm curious a bit, Jeremy, about like why do we
Exactly.
have humor and comedy? How does that make sense evolutionary for us? Like we have language, but when did we learn to do irony and punchlines?
Let me see if I've got it around here. So the heart of my work is recursion. Recursion is when the output of a system becomes to it. Einstein was once asked what was the most amazing phenomena in the universe, and he said compound interest.
Wow.
Compound interest is recursion. It takes various forms, but one of the forms is things being folded back in on themselves, and when it comes back in, it counters what the direction of the thing in the first place. So I actually see recursion at the origins of life, and that's the backdrop for all my work. Is I'm trying to figure out what we are, not starting with humans and not starting with impressions of things. I'm trying to understand what selves and trying are and how they could ever have emerged from chemistry in the first place. So I think they emerged by recursion. I could explain that. That's a whole other thing. But humor is all about recursion too. It's where you look at the variety of humor. It is the amusement of seeing something flip back on itself. Here's a way to think about it. What are ironic situations? Ironic situations are when you do the right thing and it comes out wrong, or you do the wrong thing and it comes out right. That's what we mean by them. And that stuff is it's terrifying for life. That is, I could make the move and die, and that matters to me. It's also slapstick. It's exactly the definition of slapstick. It's like slipping on a banana peel. You did the right thing if there weren't a banana peel down there, but because there's a banana peel down there, it's exactly the wrong thing. And you fall over backwards, and you could die from cracking your head open. But it's slapstick. So I think that irony and recursion and all of that is built into the situation. And one thing about language is it makes recursion very easy to mark. So I can say hypocritical things, and they're very funny. So if I say be intolerant of intolerance, that's actually funny. I mean, I could say it in a more amusing way, but if you track comedy, and I study comedy closely for two reasons. One is I'm a student of it, and the other is I love it. Almost all of it is that kind of flipped back on itself. Someone saying something. I mean, it's early in the morning, so I'm not remembering any great examples of this. But here's an example that was an early mantra for me in my work. No matter how hard I chase the truth, it will never catch me. Okay. And my dad used to say, he was an ironic guy. He'd say, I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing. Okay, so that's irony. That's like MC Escher. He used to call them Escherisms. It's where you flip something back on itself. I think that life is fundamentally ironic, which means that I'm dead serious about it, and it's just that's the nature.
So you said
of
you're
it.
also a student of comedy.
So
How are you? What exactly are you studying in comedy? Okay.
Well, I watch a lot of it. But on top of that, I read books about it. Court jesters, the history of court jesters. I think of them kind of like as the canary in the coal mine. When a leader cannot tolerate a court jester, that's the beginning of dictatorship, tyranny, all of that. So so I read about it, and you could say I kind of meditate on it. It's with me all the time. I practice it a lot. That is, I'm interested in that kind of humor.
Mhm.
I've teased both of you a little bit today, and to me, it's the greatest form of intimacy. The greatest form of intimacy is not sex. Sex is a bizarre ritual that. I mean, when you step back from it, as I did at about 60, I just think it's not that intimate. It's a strange combination of things, but to be able to laugh at and with each other.
Wow.
Is the height of intimacy. It's why I actually find stand-up comedy shows to be the best, you could say spiritual, I don't use the word much, but spiritual congregation you can get. It's laughing at each other with each other. It's and that's what I try to achieve in my
Is it just people
in my friendships? It's
laughing at themselves and then sharing their own traumas and then relating to each other on that?
Exactly. That's what it is. It's to recognize this clusterflux we're all in. How it's the opposite of acting like you're God who's figured it all out. It's that self-effacing irony, self-effacing humor, which is there in my dad's quote. It's there in what I just said about no matter how hard I chase the truth, it'll never catch me. All of that stuff is getting at, we're dropped down into this planet. We have no idea who we are or what this is. We got to figure it out. We got all these distracting voices telling us what's what when we're growing up. We're trying to figure out who we are while we're changing rapidly. As young people and adolescents, we have no idea. And then at some point, we got to act like we've actually got it all figured out. It's comedy. Right. It just is. It's a tragic comedy. Life is a tragic comedy. And once you get used to that, you can actually have a decent time, and you can connect with people. My best idea of fun these days, and actually intimacy, is like what we're doing. It's guys sitting on a porch. It's people sitting on a porch speculating about what this all is and who we are in it. I just think that's a great thing to do with ourselves.
Do you think that humor helps with decision making as well? So
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Can you get a little?
Has an influence on decision making, so when you want to make,
yeah. Great question. Yes, because you need a certain kind of flexibility in decision making. So one way I think about it, I think I can make this connection. I call it the spin doctor's Hippocratic oath. When you're deciding, you need the power of neutral thinking. And one of the ways to get the power of neutral thinking is to be self-countering. That is, you believe really strongly one thing, you believe really strongly its opposite thing, and you that's one way to kind of neutralize when you're deciding. But when you're decided, you have to spin it hard. So when you're deciding, unspin or counterspin as a way of deciding. And when you're decided, when you've made a decision, you've got to spin it hard. You've got to sell it to yourself and others. The alternation between those two opposite behaviors, they call for opposite behavior, is hard. You have to figure out when to reconsider a decision you've made. For example, you've decided on your path, and then you decide, well, when do you decide to rethink it? But yes, humor would be a big part of deciding. And when I've done business consulting, that's one of the things I bring to it. Is I'll point out, wait, dude, you came up with a proposal, you got yourself all enthusiastic about it. You got to remember that it's a proposal. You haven't bought it yet. At Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company where I did consulting for a while, they called me the custodian of confusion, which I loved. It meant that I was a guy who said to him, dude, I actually used this example. I said, dude, it's like you're a guy who goes into a clothes shop, tries on a pair of pants, and decides he must buy them because they're on them. You're just trying them out. It's just a proposal. Stop. Think about the alternative. You're still deciding. You haven't decided yet. Being decided feels much more comfortable than deciding. We hate doubt.
Yeah.
Doubt is not fun. Resolution, and this is the appeal to an asshole, is that they want to. They love a pat answer. So alternating between those two requires some humor. A classic example of that kind of humor is that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Notice how that thing sits there. That's my story is pointing at it from outside of it, and I'm sticking to it is jumping back into the decision. That kind of exposes this alternation between being something and standing outside and seeing yourself being something. All that's related to
humor
it.
Was
and humor
a
is
very
a
good
big
way
part of it.
dealing with assholes, but not in the way that you mentioned it. More of like in the way where if someone is trying to be an asshole or is maybe bullying someone else, I try to make them a bit more friendlier, or like maybe I befriend them in a way where I use humor in a sense that either I'll be a bit assertive on like in our conversation with a twist of humor in it, and once I get them to laugh, it's done. I know I've broken their walls down.
So yes. So I have this buddy who was who's a very new age. He's a college buddy. We've been friends for years. And he would get on his high horse about spiritual matters, and tell me, and it finally came down to me just shaking him and saying, "Just wink at me every once in a while. Just wink, please wink. Let me know that you are, blowing smoke." So there, and with him, I would play the goofball a lot. That's one of the roles I like to play. It's kind of like court jester to a friend. It is related to what you're talking about. It's what I just described was a little more confrontational. It had gotten to that point. I had tried to try to tease him into a state of irony often. And yes, this is an example of someone when I finally confronted him. This is after years of dealing with him, going on these tunnel vision reveries. He would start to tell me about what the cosmos wants and the higher power and all this stuff, and he would completely forget his audience. It was so funny because the irony of it was he would go on these long rants about being present and completely lose touch with the fact that I didn't want to hear it anymore. I'd heard it and they're done there before. So at some point I escalated to the point where he got it, and now he winks, and every time he does, I thank him, and I wink right back. That is, I pose as the authority who judged him as saved, but I'm doing that self-mockingly. So that does relate to what you're talking about. It's a very useful bit of verbal combat. Is to lighten things up that way.
When you want to speak to people in general, it's not is to say something and not necessarily explain yourself. Just say it as it is, which is most probably like it is your opinion. Say what's on your mind, and then leave it there. So people will have a reaction initially to what you say, and they'll think about it, and then they might want a bit more, or and you might doubt yourself if they actually understood you. Just leave it be and let them absorb the information. Sometimes it'll take them more time to actually understand what you said. And you don't actually have to explain yourself unless maybe they ask questions. But even then, it's not necessary.
Got it. So there are two things in there. One is it's very useful when you offer reasons, or what we call warrants, rationales for why you have decided something. You are inviting debate. And sometimes you don't want to invite debate. So this will come up most when you're dealing with kids. If you say, don't do this, and then you give them reasons, you're basically inviting debate. So that's one side of it. And there are lots of places where I would do what you're talking about, but it's almost the definition of being unreasonable. That is, you're not supplying reasons. It comes down to because I said so. On the other hand, it's extremely dangerous. It's actually so I have a rule that I try to apply for myself. If I'm talking about something that everybody agrees with, I don't have to put on a subjective caveat. I don't have to say I believe it's raining out. But if I am saying anything that's controversial, I have to put a subjective caveat in it. That is, I cannot say stop being defensive, because that's
Yeah.
Right.
it's my opinion that they're being defensive. I have to say I suspect you're being defensive. Now, when I'm dealing with an asshole, I flip that. No, I don't get. If they are going to talk like they are God's eyes on the universe, as if they've got the view from nowhere, as if they bring no bias or interpretive distortions to it, then if they're going to talk like that, I'm going to talk like that back at them. I'm going to say you're an asshole, or something like that. That is, I don't have to put the caveat on it if they don't put the caveat on it, but I do have to remember that it's a bet. So I don't have to. So imagine this one tool. Remember, I said don't debate
Right.
them; they're just baiting to you taking the bait. Okay. Well, so that would mean that in a situation dealing with someone who's like that, I don't have to explain why I think they're an asshole, but I do have to remember that it's my guess, or else I become an asshole. Yeah, I become the guy who's umpiring. I'm Trumpiring and saying, okay, I see what's going on between. You're an asshole. That's I have to know that that's bogus. That I'm not. That I don't have the independent perspective either. The authoritative perspective.
Jeremy,
So yeah, various.
what
tools
about what can we do in
what's that?
schools that might try to avoid assholes from the get-go, from the beginning? Like, is teaching them humor or something in schools a way to destroy it?
Yeah. So this is. Yeah. So this is I would say this is the tragedy of education, is that this is the job. This is job number one in a society, is to make it so folks don't grow up to be assholes. How you do that is really challenging, but the problem is that schools don't even hardly recognize that that's an issue. Now, we talk about how in schools you need more teaching and critical thinking, but critical thinking is itself a complicated area in ways that Socrates recognized. He said the problem with teaching logic is that then any asshole, he didn't use the term, then any asshole will use it to defend whatever they think and attack anybody who disagrees with them. And now, in psychology, we talk about smart idiots. There are people who are basically assholes. That is, they're not learning. They identify not as learners but as learned, and they use all the fancy tricks of critical thinking. So this is I keep on encountering this one, because I have to do battle with assholes to practice this stuff, and so, or I have to find ways of dealing with trolls. And one of the most fascinating things about the Trump trolls was beautifully exemplified by one who I encountered, who right out of the box said, "I'm a critical thinker." He said, "Okay, we're having a conversation, but I'm a critical thinker," and I asked him, I said, "I have a PhD in epistemology. I would never say that I'm a critical thinker, as if that's a badge of honor. Why are you a critical thinker?" And he said, "You got to believe me, because if I took a lie detector test, I would pass it." I said, "There's a huge difference between honesty and truth. They're not the same thing. You can honestly believe total bullshit, that lots of people do." So he didn't get anywhere with it, but I think what happened was that his evangelical church had told him that he was a critical thinker. And basically what people do is that it's like, I know what the word means. I just care if it sounds good. I'm just trying to wear whatever merit badges the cool kids are wearing. That's all. So do I have integrity? Yeah. Why? Because it sounds good. That's all. I'll have whatever they're having. Am I Christian? Yeah, I'm Christian because my friends some points. So this happens over and over. And if I call it the duck and tuck. You duck anything that sounds negative.
Yeah.
You tuck yourself anything that sounds positive. It's all just claims by feel. And it's a major distortion. It's how people become.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
Right.
the issue with asshole. Asshole just sounds bad. In my book, I might call my book Advanced Psychoproctology for Beginners. Why are they beginners? Because they use the word asshole, but I bet in their entire life they've never stopped to wonder, okay, how do you actually distinguish an asshole? What actually distinguishes them other than that you don't like them? So
Right.
But back to education, yes, it's a big issue, and to some extent,
100%.
it's sidelined in education, and as a result, we end up with classrooms that can't even get to the other stuff because kids are trying out different versions of being an asshole, and it becomes very difficult to deal with it. We don't have a society that prioritizes the verbal combat necessary for dealing with the human tendency to want to play God. And once again, it's not a religious thing. The religion makes it really easy, so does spirituality, almost exactly the same. One has a white beard on God and the other one doesn't. But you can be an asshole for anything or for nothing. That's the interesting thing. And it's just a real strong temptation for humans.
Figuring out what their purpose in life is, and maybe because of their confusion in life, they kind of take it off on others.
Yes. So yes and no. So you can think of it all as the economics of doubt. Who has the burden of doubt and who doesn't? And a standard move for any of us would be to offload doubt onto other people. So everyday gaslighting is fascinating to me. That is, we all have to gaslight to some extent. If I want to persuade Ali of something, then I am going to cast doubt on his perspective, and I should, because
Yes, exactly.
Ali, he pretends he's a professor. But anyway, no, but that's right. But So there is going to be a lot of that casting doubt on other people, and it's a great way to offload it from yourself. So that's what an asshole is doing. People sometimes say, "Yeah, I worry about whether I'm an asshole," and my response is, "If you worry about whether you're an asshole, you're probably not." Because assholes have figured out a way to not worry about it, or to alternate between saying, "Moi, I would never be an asshole. I've got integrity. I'm a critical thinker," and to say, "Yeah, I'm an ass," So they alternate between the two positions about it, but both of them are ways of deflecting it. That is, I don't feel cognitive dissonance when I say, "Yeah, I'm an asshole. That's what makes me smart." And I don't feel cognitive dissonance when I say, "Me, I'm not an asshole. Other people are assholes." So it is interesting how they avoid doubt, how they offload it onto other people. Anybody who ever challenges an asshole is wrong-headed, stupid, evil, whatever, and therefore they should rethink themselves. They should check themselves before they wreck themselves. I shouldn't. I'm the authority on that. The umpire doesn't have to feel doubt.
Assholes out there? Like, why not?
Well, this is the challenge. It's much easier for me to spot the assholes who disagree with me than the ones who agree with me. This is a human problem. That is, someone who is emphatic, someone who is self-certain about something I resonate with, is going to be harder for me to spot than someone who completely disagrees with me. I'll notice the buttheads who butt heads with me more than I'll notice the buttheads who agree with me. Are there actually nice assholes? No, but this is a challenge because remember, I'm talking about people who act with they act like
Yeah.
they're not betting, that they're not guessing. Okay, well, when you think about some of our heroic leaders, many of them self-certainty is if you're trying to right wrongs in this world, you are going to have to act. You're going to have to dig in your heels. You're going to have to push back. So you're going to have to defend yourself. So but technically, are there any good assholes, like nice assholes? Well, actually, there's two ways of thinking about this question. One is, are there assholes whose style is niceness? Hell yes. Hell yes. Lots of them. It's got nothing to do with whether you use a loud, bold voice or flex your muscles. I had to coin the term yin-timidation for the feminine, open-hearted, open-minded asshole. It's basically a bully who does it with softness. Love bombing would be an example of this. Someone who, when you say, we've got to do this, I think we should do this, they say, well, no, we should be more open-minded and we shouldn't make any commitments. That can become a form of bullying too. I have a loud bass voice. Women have often called me on that as if that's the only sign of an asshole, and I realized no. And some of these women were quite treacherous from my perspective. That is, they were thugs.
Back on the street.
They just didn't act like. And we've got some in this election coming up. I mean, I think of Mike Pence as a kinder, gentler fascist. That is, his style is all sweetness and light. No, he's a total asshole. Perspective.
Do you think
From
Trump
my
is an asshole?
Once again, I have to caveat it. I did an interview with an interesting guy. It was a podcast interview. It was very funny. With a guy who was very highly placed through his wife. And I had been to a conference. I had been to a party. It was way out of my league, but it was a bunch of high prestige people, including the top lawyer for Google and all. This was the husband of one of them, and he took me to task for me thinking there were assholes. He was kind of a prude this way. And then we did an interview, and he wanted to start out by saying, so you think that Mike Pence is an asshole? And I said, yeah, but I could explain why I think he is. Oh, so you think all Christians are assholes? What?
What is that jump?
Dude, that's not how it works.
Right.
That's right. That's not how it works. It's basic laws of logic.
That sounds like
But,
an asshole
anyway, he
of
was
a
trying to
journalist,
catch me up.
to be honest. It's like just when they try to bait you into those kind of situations.
Yeah, no, of course you can. Right, and so they're right. They should be able to ask challenging questions. But these are people who are not trying to ask challenging questions because they're curious. They're not learning. They're umpiring. So, and this is a brand of news reporting that isn't news reporting. I mean, when you think about what OAN or Fox
100%.
News does, this is all they do, and it's really satisfying. This is what I got to get at. I call it scornography. It's the pornography of scorn. That is, it's sadomasochistic. Nothing will make you feel more confident than laughing at the fools out there who don't agree with you. And you just get long nights of this kind of circle jerk activity. These are people just basically masturbating to their own authority. And it's got nothing to do with content. And it's fucking fun. It's fun. We all like it, but get a room. Do it in sports. Right. Do it in other areas. Don't do it in politics. We actually need to run this place. Is basically how I think of it. We've got jobs to do. Don't turn this into your vanity project. Don't turn running the world into a vanity project. If you help,
don't mind.
Get a room.
One.
Yeah.
Going back to the topic about bullying and bullying in schools. So the UK passed a law recently about banning mobile phones in schools completely, and they said it attributes to being distracting kids from school and at the same time bullying. So I wanted to catch your opinion on that, and what is the process of that policy making there? the decision making done by the government on this situation?
Well, so I have this master's degree in public policy, which really sobered me up about the challenges of making laws. Before that, I really thought I had figured it all out, and no, it's really complicated. No, I was a political activist for 20 years.
Yeah.
I got a degree in political activism that was basically, it capped my career. Is that I thought, oh wow, this stuff is hard. One of the big challenges in lawmaking is that the more fine-tuned a law, the harder it is to enforce, the more expensive it is. So, for example, if you have laws that it's much easier to have a law that bans phones from the classroom than to have a law that bans them except under these conditions, under these conditions. It requires more vigilance, and it's more costly and harder to enforce. So I understand, because I've been a teacher, the challenges of this, and I also think that this relates directly to what we're just talking about. That's one of the things that kids will do when they are on their phone is enjoy scoronography. It takes two forms. One is the glory of people like me. So a lot of memes are just that kind of self-elevation. Mm-hmm. It's basically virtue signaling or grandstanding. You know, you like something and it proves that you're a good person and gives you a little mojo boost. The other part is the down. So I call this up dunking. Mm-hmm. That is, you dunk other people to lift yourself up. At the extreme, it's sadomasochism. It's where everybody's wrong who's not me. And you could say that the sacred texts are full of this. That is, you know, and it doesn't. You don't have to. Before the sacred text, I happen to be reading Homer's Odyssey right now. Okay, it's everybody doing the same behaviors. They're all slaughtering and fighting and all this, but side is completely virtuous, and anybody who's against him is completely viceful. So the sacred texts have that about them too. So this is an old temptation of ours, but it's really amplified through social media and these guys. Because if you're looking for hits on, so you'll do far better than the kind of stuff I talk about by simply playing into that up-dunking satisfaction, the scoronography. So that's a real challenge we're facing these days, is that we got these new medias in which you can learn it. And so kids are, you could say, learning how to be assholes much faster than it's being countered. In the meantime, we're dealing with this outdated system of education. The chalkboard and lecturer thing was developed 3,000 years ago or something like that. So in the meantime, the social media is far more education than people are getting from school. That is, in terms of sheer hours of exposure and production values, no contest. It's just more fun. And so, which is just fascinating to watch all around. I mean, the sacred texts as something to learn from, their production values aren't nearly as good as Marvel comic movies. And so I'm glad we've got morality tales that are taking the form of Marvel comics. I also like that they're kind of polytheistic in that you got multiple heroes, and that they're also dealing with the foibles. That is, so Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite of these kind of morality tales, because these are really human. They're Deadpool. These are full of where the guy is making mistakes. So I actually think that we're heading in a decent direction that way. And there's far more, but how to deal with this in schools is a challenge. And it also has to do with this other fundamental challenge, which is, with language, we can achieve lift from reality. Not in reality, we're still stuck in reality, but we can imagine infinite wisdom, infinite goodness, infinite heroism, all of this stuff with language. And then the more you add levels of what we would call technically displacement to it, we end up being a creature that can dissociate from reality better and better. So if I were to make a prediction about what will make us go extinct as a species, it's basically a dissociation death spiral. Reality gets bad, we check out into our fantasies becoming legends of our own mind, neglecting reality, which gets worse, which makes us want to escape it more and more, and we just spin out. That would be that's likely to, I would say that is likely to have happened to intelligent species throughout the universe many times. That is, language is there's no reason to assume that language is survivable. Language enables a kind of dissociation from reality that other organisms don't deal with. We can check out of the immediate. So this is one of the interesting challenges that I think we're up against. The dissociation death spiral is a real concern for me. It's a bigger problem, I think, than nukes and climate. That is the capacity, because we can't even deal with those kind of major problems unless we are grounded in reality, and it's just getting easier and easier to unground, to check out.
I never thought
like
of
with
how
cell phones in classrooms.
dysfunctional it can be for us mentally, just based on language.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love language. It's my favorite plaything. I love it. Irony is possible because of language. Animals can't get ironic to nearly the degree because they can't mark things and then reverse things. You need language to do it. But yeah, we've lasted as a species. We've lasted 3 minutes in. If you scrunch the universe's history down to 1 year, we're 3 minutes. It's nothing. And there's no reason to assume that this has that this is a survivable enhancement. Yeah. So an example would be, I bet that climate crisis and climate crisis denial has happened multiple times in the universe before. That is, it's very likely that an organism that's a late bloomer would find fossil fuels in one form or another, start using them up, and use them up like there's no tomorrow because they have the power of language. That one definition of intelligent life form would be that it has language. That's how I think of it. And so, no, I bet we're just another example of that. And yeah, we are really close to being able to survive it. That is, we have the wherewithal to survive it, but we have this extremely distracting thing called language that makes it so our chances of managing the technology are a little low.
Jeremy, I have one last question, if that's fine with you. I wanted to ask about so does our modern technology make us less human? That's my argument here to say, if we're trying to strive, that's what makes us human, and then technology is taking away all kinds of effort on our part, and then we're just doing things. Would you say so?
Yeah, and so technology certainly, and language certainly, the two of them enable us to engage in a kind of Robo Envy. So think about the people who claim enlightenment. I once was lost, but now I'm found. That is, I have seen the light. Think about Plato's cave or the red pill, blue pill concept. The natural tendency would be to claim that you've seen the light through language. You've got some concept, and it's pat. You've had the last epiphany you'll ever need. You basically left Plato's cave, or you've taken the red pill. I think there's no surer sign that someone's taken the blue pill than their claim that they've taken the red pill. That is exactly, anybody who claims they've seen reality. That's my definition of woke. That is, you set aside the loaded political use of the term. That's exactly what it means, and that's exactly. There has never been a more woke movement in the United States than Trumpism. That is, they've seen the light, they're done thinking, they're learned now, they have all the answers, they're the umpires. And yes, technology is into that very well, because they can sell their scornography at anybody who disagrees with them. And once again, you could do this for anything. Communists did it. It doesn't matter what you're claiming the light is you've seen. So one of the interesting things for me is that if you think back to Plato's cave, you know that story, right? The basic. Let me. In case your listeners don't know it, basically Plato is imagining the Matrix. He's saying we're all looking at delusions, and some heroic guy like Neo escapes the cave where they're showing him delusions, and he's blinded by the light, and he becomes the philosopher king. Well, that is the perfect metaphor for waking up. The funny thing about waking up is that I wake up every morning. I did just a few hours ago. I'm sleepy the next night. I mean, it's not like I've woken up for life. That would be insomnia. I wouldn't like it. No. So, but the problem. What is a healthier attitude is if you have been deceived and you see the light you should see is that you are deceivable, that you can be fooled. It's not like I call it, I once was lost, but now I'm blind. And that's a more popular move than I once was lost and apparently I can be lost. So yes, we are and part of that is this idea of what I call Robo Envy. That is, that some idea reprogrammed me, and now I am not human, I am superhuman. It's just one of the most delicious, tempting ways to become an asshole around. It's
Chef's kiss. What do you think, Saeed?
I just wanted, if it's possible, and like very briefly, do you have an example of a current example of a philosopher king?
Oh,
okay.
No, I don't believe in philosopher kings.
Okay.
I mean, I believe in checks and balances for a fundamental reason. That is, it shows up. It's a recursion problem again. Remember, we're talking about recursion. Who governs the governor? I do not think that there is. I mean, yes. I think there are better leaders and worse leaders, but I think that they are operating at best in systems of checks and balances. I think of myself as a system of checks and balances. A living being is a system of checks and balances. So you could say balance checks, things that are keeping each other from runaway effects. But the philosopher king idea is somehow that someone reaches a position where they are officially wise and no longer need to be in any way checked by anything external because they've actually got it's very attractive to followers and to people who claim themselves philosopher kings. And no, I don't think that's how it works. I don't think anybody figures it out that way.
Well, and I don't trust it. Interesting conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes.
We've talked about assholes. We've talked about this life. How to
Thank you for having
people, me. How to avoid gaslighting.
Yes.
I hope people.
Exactly. And how to accept that there's gaslighting everywhere as well, right?
Just as much as we did from this podcast. And this is how we sign out. Actually, before we sign out, Jeremy, where can people find you?
It's easy. There's way too much of me on the web. So I've got 1,000 articles with Psychology Today. Some of them called under the title Jerkology. Why some people tick like time bombs. What makes some people tick like time bombs? Ambigamy, which is insights for the deeply romantic and deeply wary. I've got a YouTube channel, which is where I'm focusing these days mostly, is making short videos. If you look up my name, you'll find way too much of me. And there's also a kind of an overview of my cradle to grave midlife spread at jeremysherman.com. jeremysherman.com
is also coming on the podcast. Guys, you know how we exit. We cover the
All right.
Out of here.
Thanks for having me, you guys.